you probably recognize, this is not your gentle host, Jim Reed. I am filling in for Jim this week, but I am Chris Jones, 5B5 on Twitter and 5x5 in the Poker Stars home game. Thanks for joining us. We're really excited about this week's episode. We're joined by Luke Hanna, halfway around the world in Australia. We're really excited to talk to him. Before we get started, the RecPoker podcast, as always, is brought to you by the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino. We're grateful for their support and remind you that they have a really big series coming up in March. The MSPT is coming back into town, so check out their website for all the details around that. That's always a fantastic series. They do a great job of hosting it, and they're really expanding their offerings there. You know, they've got the main event that's always been the bread and butter, but now they're adding mystery bounties and some tag team events. There's a lot of things circling around that. There's some mixed games as well. So check out the full schedule there at Running Aces, and be sure you if you can, make your way down to Running Aces when that takes place. But before we get started with Luke, I wanted to introduce our other two RecCing Crew members joining us today. RecCing Crew, who else is joining us today on today's episode?
I'm Troy Chapman, and I'm Chapo Australia in the home game.
I am John Somsky, and I am Poker Geekin' everywhere.
And we are so fortunate to be joined by Luke Hanna. Luke, welcome to the RecPoker podcast.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm super excited to be here. Looking forward to having a bit of a chinwag with everyone here and going on. Yeah,
I love it. You know, one of the things that we tend to ask all our guests, and I think just before we got on the call, you were mentioning you've had sort of, you're a player yourself, but you've had some roles. You worked in social media for some poker organizations. We always like to ask our guests, where do you place yourself in the poker world? If somebody asks you, how do you describe yourself to somebody at a party who doesn't play poker? Like, how do you describe what is your place or role in the poker world?
I generally say that I play poker seriously, but really just like for fun as well. Like I really want to make sure that when I'm playing, I'm having a good time, and I think that's very important. And I think whenever I've actually been engaged and having fun and talking on the table and stuff like that, I think I've actually posted some of my best results. So I tend to lean into that pretty heavily. And I think if everyone has a good experience on the table, it's only going to be good for poker. So that's, my attentive mindset, a serious, taking it serious, but also making sure that, I have fun.
And that's one of the things that we often talk about on the podcast is, there's so much growth in the game with solvers and the education side and taking the game seriously, and people sort of staring each other down, putting on their headphones, not really like the human side of the game can kind of get lost. And I think it is so important, especially for the lifeblood of the game, to have sort of more recreational players involved to keep the game fun. And so what are some of the things that you think that either you yourself or that the game itself could do to make sure that the game stays a game and is fun?
Sure. I think as somebody who takes the game seriously, I think there are things that as a player that I can do, and I think other people who take the game more seriously can do, to just give that good time to the recreational people who are playing just for fun. And you really have to remember, people play poker for different reasons. Some people do play to make money, and other people, it's a time thing, and they're coming to have fun with friends or whatever it is. And you don't really want to ruin that fun, because they won't play if you do that. So, generally I'm talking on the table. I'm really engaging with everybody. And then you can kind of see my shirt. I kind of, I think poker is actually, I don't know. I look at a poker room and I see everyone in gray and black, and that's not fun for me. So I kind of go out of my way to have colorful shirts. And I actually think Troy's seen me a bunch of times with my ridiculous shirts. And I think the more the loud, the better, really.
Yeah,
I've actually seen a lot of people come through and start to wear their own colorful shirts now. So it's actually been fun to see that happen. A couple of people join in the fun.
Yeah. For our audio listeners, you should at least just check one glance at the video version of this on YouTube, because you will get a full picture of the shirt, which I do love. I think it's pretty awesome. And we had I think we've had some really famous examples of this. The World Series of Poker a few years ago, the main event had John Hesp. I don't remember if you remember his sort of deep run into the final table. He was always wearing really electric, kind of wonderful outfits. I think it really brought kind of a sense of liveliness to the game when he was playing. It was pretty great.
Yeah. I think that was actually a really good thing for poker as well. Have somebody who is actually just having a good time on the poker table and playing and I think showing what actually poker should be. I think again, like just to add more to that, like everyone's on the table, some people, I think, like excessive tanking and that sort of thing. There's just not as much of a need for it these days as what I think there used to be, and I think it does take away from some of the fun aspect. And sometimes the people who do take it the most serious, can step back a little bit and go, do I really need to take like a minute versus this person who really doesn't really play that often, and maybe lose a little tiny bit of EV for like the long-term gain of poker.
Yeah. And I know Troy has a question, but I just wanted to follow up one last question on to sort of follow that piece out and just sort of ask. So you've mentioned like taking the game seriously a few times. So what does that mean to you? Like, what does it mean for a player who's at, like we can talk a little bit about some of your results as we kind of get going, but what does that mean to you to take the game seriously? Is this do you have a regular study regimen? Do you review what you've played? How do you take the game seriously?
Okay. I'm probably the least orthodox poker player, to be honest. I wouldn't say my strength is in regards to studying GTO or anything like that. I've actually seen that my best methods for studying is some like real live situations. So I think there's a few poker coaches on YouTube and stuff that actually have like call-in shows with like real hands. So and having that spoken out in a real life situation rather than just on like pen and paper has been a thing. I think like one of the best books that I ever read was Gus Hanson's Every Hand Reveal. And I actually fashioned a lot of my game around that book and his style in Australia, and it's been pretty successful, but very exploitive with a little bit of math thrown in. I think like the adaptiveness of my game has shown to really bring out some good results. And that's what I kind of mean by taking it seriously. Yeah, like I'm always involved in poker. I'm like listening to it. He's calling show on the car drive over to a game or something along those lines. But because it's like a real life situation, I tend to resonate with it better.
Great. Troy, you wanted to jump in here.
So, g'day, Luke.
G'day, Troy. Good to see you again.
So, just for our listeners, can you give us a little bit of a background on where you are in poker? So, I know that we both play in Sydney. Can you give everyone a little bit of a rundown what the Sydney or Australian poker market looks like and the sort of buy-in levels and where you try to concentrate your play for us?
Sure. I mean, I think Sydney is very unique. I think we're very blessed here in Australia. We have an absolute huge amount of poker businesses in Sydney. We probably have 5 or 6 plus poker leagues in the area. And the buy-in ranges of like anywhere from free rolls, which are like, where they guarantee 350. I mean, I don't play those, but they have pros. I think APL has like a pro series for like $22 all the way up to they've started doing their own little poker tours, and they've gone up to $2,500 buy-ins in clubs. We actually have a lot of our leagues allowed to actually play out in clubs in Australia, so that's why we have such an exorbitant amount of leagues and a lot of players playing in all those leagues. I tend to focus my buy-ins at around that 200 to 300, 450 like range. I do play some of the bigger ones in that like 1,000, 1,150 kind of buy-in on an occasion, but I tend to be very selective. I myself have found that I kind of want to have 100% of myself in all these games. Some people sell action, and I have done in the past, but I've just found that for me personally, I think on that bubble or whatever, like I feel like you get a little bit nervous. You want to do so well for your friend because usually you're selling to somebody you know really well, and you want to give them that return. But it is always nice, saying, "Oh, I've won this tournament. Here's, 30 or 50x what you put in to believe in me." But I tend to do that. 200 to 500 range is probably my sweet spot.
Okay, and when you're considering, so you've got your in the morning you wake up and you've got $400 sitting on the table and you're ready to rock and roll for the day. Yeah. What do you take into consideration in looking at event A versus event B?
Sure. I think for me personally, again, I'm looking for very select things. So I'm looking for leagues that I know the players, leagues that look, I've put up some good results because whether it's the structure's a little bit better or I do well against their particular play style. I think I found in Sydney that certain players, certain leagues have different styles depending on which one you do play. So some are very limp and donk lead heavy. Some are very 3-bet heavy. Some a very do have some check raise. Some people limp with like their big pocket pairs, but each league seems to have some uniqueness, or some are extra cally, like they don't really let go. So for me, I want to see the value. I think like that is the biggest thing. I'm really trying to like table select kind of like a tournament, and pick where I think whether there's going to be some sort of overlay in the tournament. I think that's one of my favorite words. If there's going to be an overlay in a tournament, you'll probably see me there, or if there's a chance for it. But also, APT, have some great games, and I've had some great success there, which we'll probably go into a bit later. But their structures are pretty decent, and also like they have that 100+ kind of runner total, and I feel like I generally run deep, and as you kind of know, I think in Sydney we're kind of used to faster blind structures here, so we generally have that 15-minute to 30-minute levels, with APT being a poker tour having like more close to that 30-minute level. So I've had some pretty deep runs in there, and I think also like Poker Palace they do some really amazing structures as well. So their games as well. So those are probably some of the ones that I like to look out for. Yeah.
So cool. So go ahead, Troy. Sorry, Chris. No. So I was just going to follow on from that. We were talking about the size field that we're talking about, Luke. Do you have any particular strategies that you're using to help navigate that size field? So that you might be able to share with our listeners. So keeping in mind that a lot of our listeners are also trying to play in those sort of $300 stakes, and there might be some guys out there that just don't have success with it and others that do. And if you're running deep, and I know that you've got a good history, which we'll go through. So I'd like to hear if you can share any of those sort of default strategies that you might use in these larger field events. Yeah,
sure. I mean, despite the fact that I'm going to be playing against you at some point in the future, Troy.
2 weeks, mate.
Look, I mean, I think my game, I've spent a long time evolving it. So I think, I've been playing something like 15 years. And like I kind of already alluded to, I kind of built out on Gus Hansen's playing style, very aggressive. I think back then you were kind of used to 3xing pre and that sort of thing. But nowadays, I think it's kind of been shown to be a bit more correct, especially to the middle to late stages in a tournament where you've got, 20 to 30 bigs. You really want to be making a lot of small sizing. So for me personally, it's a lot around small sizing and keeping the pressure on. I think you're really able to define people's ranges very well with a lot of small size bets, especially late in tournaments, when I think, to some, the money and the pay jumps and, the bubble might be, more prominent to others. And like, you do have to adjust to each person, because I think, some people actually don't care whether they bubble or not, and some people actually, really do care. So you really got to pick which people you are doing some picking on. But I think a lot of small sizing and a lot of pressure, forcing them to make the decisions, and leaving yourself with, I don't ever really want to be making myself have the tough decision. I want them to be having the tough decision. So I think that's a lot of it. I think that's like very,
cool.
very key.
So I've got lots of follow-up questions to this, and you'll find out we're not even broadcasting this. This is just to get all your secrets for Troy to play you in the next couple of weeks.
That wouldn't surprise me.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So one of the things that you mentioned, speaking about that, is sort of like game selecting, and I think that's something that tournament players don't think about as often as, a cash game player, that's something they think about all the time. Is my table the right place? Is my seat the right place? Should I get up and leave? Am I feeling good today? And tournament players are just kind of like, well, this is the tournament. I'm going to go enter it. And it's, I don't get to pick where my seat is. So I don't have much say in this. So let's just go. But can you talk a little bit more about, like some of the things that you think about as you're deciding when you're going to play, where you're going to play, you've mentioned these sort of different clubs that have different styles. What is the best style to play against, in your opinion? Like what kind of opponent? And this is maybe helpful for some of our listeners, I think, in thinking about their own game styles. Like, what is the easiest style to play against?
Sure. Okay. I guess like one thing at a time. So I think like tournament selecting, I think is very underappreciated. Like, we have so much tournaments on offer in Australia at the same time, and we actually have so many mini poker tours that are going on all the time. You can kind of, I guess, like get a grasp of, which tournaments all the stronger opponents are going to be playing in, based on whether it's a guarantee or whatever. But you can kind of say, okay, well, this tournament might be a bit further away, but has a similar guarantee. But I think that might have some sort of overlay there. And that tournament area tends to be, like a grassroots, poker company. So whether in Australia, we actually have a lot of our poker leagues give away tickets into bigger tournaments. Mm-hmm. So what you can find is some of those players actually, are free rolling in these tournaments, essentially. And it kind of does lead to, a softer field. So, versus a straight buy-in tournament that might be, 30 minutes away. So I think paying attention to, a grassroots company versus, a straight buy-in and watching the guarantees versus the buy-in, I think is very important for me. And that's generally what I do to try and like pick which games that I'm actually going to turn up to, and that. Talking about probably the easiest people to play to, I think we just have to be like the limpers. I think my game is actually tailor-made against that style. So I personally do my best against them when they're limping. I think like I was playing a game the other day, like I just had like a lot of people limping. I'm doing a lot of small sizing. Like I'm actually probably under raising in my size, but my frequency is very high. And then my sizing on the flop is very dedicated to my raising range size hand hand ranges versus their limp ranges, and I can kind of size down or up depending on that. And then half the time they're limping and then donk leading, so it kind of tells me, oh, they've got top pair with weak kicker or whatever, and I kind of just get to start piling money into the pot with just one pair, knowing that they're very reluctant to let go. But also like not giving them an out. Like I'm not going to let you like essentially flip your hand over and tell me what you have and then get away from it. I'm going to make you make tough decisions for just right prices. So like I'm going to have ace king, you're going to have king 8, and there's a king on the board, donk lead into me, and then I'm going to click in a little bit, and just really force you to by the river, have a tough decision for, a half-size pot jam and not know what to do.
Right. No, I love this. And this actually kind of leads into some of this month, RecPoker has been really talking about c-betting a lot. And we've been talking about, we're kind of breaking it up into talking about c-betting ranges, like what do we c-bet, what do we check back, when do we, and then we're also talking about c-bet sizing. We're talking about what are the kinds of boards where we want to go really tiny, what are the kind of boards where we want to kind of go a little bit sort of something in between, like a little bit medium, and what are the kind of boards where we want to go really big sometimes when we do c-bet. I'm curious about just some of your approaches playing against these fields. You've already mentioned one when you're playing against limpers. But I'm curious about your general thoughts about your approach to c-betting at this kind of bread and butter size for the recreational player, that kind of $300 range tournament. What is some of your thoughts about c-betting?
Look, I mean, I think you have to remember that you don't need to you don't need to c-bet every single flop. So I think some people just automatically default to c-bet 100%. And I don't necessarily think that that's the correct course of action. I think, it does very much depend on the board texture and the person you're playing against. Like I've kind of said, I kind of adapt and adjust my style based on who I'm playing against. So, against, whether it's Troy or somebody else, like I'm going to play differently compared to other players and their styles. So, some people, their checks absolutely mean that they just don't have top pair. Their range is very, very weak. Again, like they're going to lead if they have top pair or better. So I kind of know where I'm at in the hand, and then I think get to continue to put pressure. But in regards to like my sizing, I think again, it does very depend on the flop texture. Like you shouldn't just be c-betting, a third, even though I think that is very much in trend these days, to bet a third or like quarter pot. I think, you need to mix betting your range and your actual hand versus their actual range. So, I'll give an example. Like if the board is like king 4-4 and you've raised pre, you can very much down bet very small on that board, knowing they're not going to be able to continue with a wide range of hands, and you're going to put pressure on those pairs. And you're going to have, ace king, and then you're going to have some bricks as well in there. And then, on the other hand, like let's say like you've decided to raise with some suited connector late position, and you've got called out of the blinds or something along those lines. And then you've hit top pair, but you've got like say 7-8 on a 7 high board. That flop you can kind of down bet small as well. Like you're actually betting your hand rather than your range. So I think it's all very dependent on as well, like who you're playing, because like if you know that this guy out of the small blind is likely to have some check raises, you can start checking back some of the hands like that, jack high, 10 high boards, even with some equity in the hand, because you don't necessarily need to get blown off that hand and put in a tough situation yourself. Because I think at the end of the day in poker, the more you can make them have a tough situation and you not being in a tough situation is really the goal here.
Yeah, no, thanks. That's you bring up a really great, the King 4-4 board really spoke to me, because that's a very similar board to one we've been talking a lot about this month. We've been talking about a queen deuce deuce board, which feels very similar in that they either have it or they don't, and it's really hard to play against whatever size you're kind of betting, no matter what. So why not go small with that kind of board? So I want to turn, for our audience that may not know you, I want to turn to some of the results. I mean, I pull up your Hendon Mob page here, and it's just littered with third, second, first, fifth, second, sixth, second, seventh, fifth, seventh, second, first. I mean, and this is just in the last, year, let's say. So. Tell us.
He's a busy boy.
Tell us about tell us about all these deep runs. Tell us about where you think your poker game is at, and like how are you doing this?
Look, I mean, I've had some great results lately. And I think I've been really building. I started to really ramp up just pre-COVID, and then obviously we had that gap, and it just took me a little bit to get back into the click of things. I feel like, poker live especially, you just got to get back into the swing of things. And I did, and then I've managed to have all these great runs in the APT, and again, like that's in that sweet spot of that $200 to $500 range where we're getting that. Larger fields, I tend to do really, really well against. I generally do not have an issue. I think we play about 10%, 12.5% in Australia in most of our games, and we're very, very top heavy. But I generally don't have an issue making those deep runs, especially when the blinds have slightly gone up in time, because I'm so used to playing 15 minutes that when you're playing 30 or 40 minutes or more, all of a sudden it's such it's just absolutely like so enjoyable to play. And then obviously, like, again, just a lot of that like Daniel Negreanu kind of like small ball, really putting people under that constant pressure. And also I really think like I speak with a lot of my a couple of my friends, really, really close friends that I trust within the poker community. And I think like also just really taking the time to make a decision. You have ace high on the river or king high on the river, and taking that extra 10 seconds and going, what do I put them on? I think like a couple of times I've gotten to the river and thought about a hand and gone, wait a minute, like I only have king high, but I actually don't think they have anything the way the hand is played out. What do I actually put them on? Took that extra couple of seconds, and then gone from I probably would have auto marked to going, okay, well now I have to call off like a 70% pot bet in this polarized spot and being correct. I do remember, I think my greatest ever story is exactly like that, where I was in like a deep stack and it was just small blind versus big blind versus a very, very aggressive person in the big blind. And I think I had king 9 of diamonds or something along those lines, but I knew the player in the big blind was very aggressive. I think the blind was something like 3-6. So I just limped, not wanting to get blown off my hand. That person flattered, and then the flop was ace 10 8 2 diamonds. I proceeded to bet small, so I bet like 8 or 10k. Not that small, but half pot. And that person proceeded to call. Turn was a 7, so now I turned it up and down with the flush draw. I ramped up my bet pretty massively. I think I bet like 35k or something along those lines. The big blind proceeded to call, and then the river paired the 8. And I've made it to the river with a king high at this point, and I've gone to check, and I'm like, I'm gonna like if this person bets, I'm just gonna fold. And the person then bet something like 70% pot, like 70,000 or something along those lines. And I started to walk through the hand. I started to think, would this person, does this person have an ace? Well, I don't really think so. Like, I think there would have been a raise pre from this really aggressive player. I've really typed them well. Are they doing it with An 8. Well, I don't think they're getting to the river with an 8 the way I've bet. Do they have like a 10 and they're just value betting a 10? Well, I just didn't think with this polarized sizing that they were betting a 10. So I really didn't know what hand that this player was trying to represent on this river, and proceeded to go from folding to calling in this really, really big spot. And then, that player ended up rolling over Jack 5 of diamonds, and I was correct, and they were quite flabbergasted by that call. But by taking that extra time to think through what hands they have, and also thinking what they think I have, really did well for me in this hand, and managed to make me win that pot that I probably would have just folded.
I love that. Because that's the kind of like things that I think players don't do enough of, where they're really thinking about those end game spots and being like, it's a scary board. There's straights. There's like, now it's paired. So there's full houses and there's all kinds of things that are available. But how can our opponent have much of that, right? It's just that I love that. I mean, that's the kind of things that we should be doing. So do you have a process when you're in those kind of spots, or is it just about like, what kinds of questions do you ask yourself, and how do you kind of break down when you're in a really difficult river decision or even earlier decision?
Sure. Look, I mean, I think like I said, I'm just really trying to think through, that player particular style, what I've seen from them. And I think that's very key. Like, I think taking time, even when you're not in a hand, to observe people, what they're doing. Like, I feel like everyone has their own tendencies in poker. And I think my game especially, but I think a lot of people just don't take advantage of what is this player doing? What is their key tendencies in poker, and how can I use that to my advantage? So whether that is, hey, that person only ever donk leaves with top pair, or that person donk leaves with draws only, or like this person check raises draws only, or like whatever. So like paying attention in those hands, putting people in hands when you're not actually involved in that pot. You can be talking, you can be having a good time with your table, but also taking that extra, paying attention extra during hands that you're actually involved in can actually pay dividends, and in hands where you're going to be put in a tough situation, and you're going to be really glad that you were paying attention previously.
John, it looks like you've unmuted.
Yeah, we have a chat or a question from the chat. Eric Anderson asks, you mentioned Galfan and Negreanu. Who or what do you study now?
Okay. So right now, I actually just mainly listen to Gus Hansen's Cash Game podcast. I love his thing. I've actually recently joined his Crush Live poker site as well to get some extra study in. But I have been playing a little bit more cash lately. Their cash games in Sydney has also like kind of boomed here. So outside of the casino, and they're actually rate free in Australia. So I've been playing a little bit extra of those. But yeah, I mean, I think also like a lot of it has been through like books like Gus Hansen's Every Hand Revealed, or Phil. I think my first ever book that I read was Phil Gordon's Little Green Book, and I think that is the greatest book for a beginner to get involved. And then I think I've read something along the lines of like Poker Theory. I think that was I can't remember who wrote it, but I do remember the comparison of poker to rock, paper, scissors with chips beating cards, position beating cards, and chips beating position kind of mentality. So I thought that was like a unique take. But those are like kind of the things that I've been reading and looking at this moment.
And then what is your play to study ratio?
Okay. My play to study ratio is actually probably very small. I would say, me personally. Probably I'm gonna say maybe like that 10 to 20% range at this moment. Again, like I am more of a active learner. So again, it has to be like, I do find that I absorb information easier when it's like a real life situation. So that's why listening to podcasts in the car and that sort of thing have I think really helped with my game, especially in the traffic. So that's been pretty good.
So you're saying it'd be like a 9-to-1 play to study ratio. You'd play 9 hours, study 1.
Yes, yeah, roughly, yeah.
And John, I think you'd be remiss if you didn't ask the final audience question.
Yeah. So does Troy's money spend better than everyone else's?
Like, I mean, especially when you knock him out right close to the bubble, it's just extra sweet, you know, like he's shock and awe when you roll over your hand that you shouldn't have, and his explanation of how do you have that hand is always really great. So I've really enjoyed it. I don't think anybody else's money is quite as good as Troy's. That's definitely for sure.
Yeah. We're all looking forward. I think Troy has some plans to come to the U.S. And I mean the poker community here is a buzz. There's just excitement. There's parades planned. It's just like, you know, it's we're all going to be rich. It's going to be great.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's got to financially plan for that that big loss of income, right? Like when he goes over there. I've managed to play over in the US a couple of times actually myself.
I was actually just going to ask you about that because it was a nice segue. So yeah, looks you have a result. Most of your results are in Australia. But you do have a result at the WSOP. I actually watched before this. I watched your interview that you gave at the WSOP. That was your first WSOP cash. Was that your first time going to the WSOP?
That was my first WSOP tournament.
Yeah, nice. Ever. So that was the Millionaire Maker. You had a very deep run in the Millionaire Maker in 2018, was it?
Yep, I think it was.
Yeah, okay. So you know, what was that experience like? You know, a lot of our audience have also maybe not been to the WSOP and are kind of looking forward to their first trip. I know some of our listeners are planning their first trip this summer. You know, what's that experience? What was that experience like for you?
Absolutely unreal. I really didn't know what to expect. You know, it was quite interesting. So at that time, I was working as a social media manager for Global Poker, and I told my boss, "Hey, and I think this was like a Monday or a Tuesday," and I said, "Hey, I want to go to Vegas on Friday," and I gave him 3 days notice, and he goes, "Yeah, sure, no problem." So I managed to book a flight and get my visa and everything sorted. Got there on Friday. You know, ran into some random, you know, friends from Australia that were like playing and visiting, which was absolutely amazing. You know, but just I think walking down that what casino was it at?
Well, it was at the Rio back in those days.
Rio. Yeah. Walking down that hallway just with all those players, like I think that Millionaire Maker had something in the range of 7,500 runners, and I think it was 4 day ones with 1 rebuy per flight. So my first shot, I managed to make it through. I think there was a big adjustment for me. You know, I kind of got there and I saw, you know, I thought people were a lot more trappy than what they are in Australia. In Australia, I think it's more betting thin than anything else, and I kind of had to really adjust really quickly because people were flatting, you know, 3 bets with kings and stuff like this, and I'm like betting off 2 streets, and I think I checked back on a river when I had top with like ace queen, and he rolled over kings, and I was kind of shocked, but I felt something was going on. So but I think if I remember correctly, it was a 7,500 starting stack and 40-minute blinds. And in Australia, even at that point, we'd definitely evolved. Everything has gone well up in regards to chip starting stacks. So, you know, we've got 20, 30, 40,000 starting stacks, 50,000 starting stacks. But we've also increased the minimum blind levels. So, like, I think our blind levels start at like 1-1 or 1-2 now. So, they've just progressed everything up, and I think that has been like to target more recreational players because they want to have more chips to play with, even if the blinds start a bit higher. So I think that's the reason why it's kind of gone that way. But I managed to battle my way through. Again, just adjusting to different people's play style. And as soon as you made day 2, you cashed. I was very excited when I made the day 2. Proceeded to come back. I think I was staying at Bally's. They had just recently renovated their rooms, and I had a spa in the lounge room, so I was very happy with that. So I was soaking in the spa in between that after the long day. I think they were even handing out free energy drinks at that point, so I was pinching a couple of those. And then managed to build a stack. I think I managed to take advantage of like a hand where I had aces or something, and somebody jammed and I flatted, and I got the other person to overcall and then get it in.
Wow.
When he had ace queen or something. So managed to build the chip stack, and then I think I battled somebody late, and I kind of tried to put him to a test, but he decided to make a hero call against me on a river. I kind of turned like a pair into a bluff and got caught out. So that didn't quite work.
Yeah, that's how those tournaments often end, right? Is some way we get called up. But so would you go back? Is that kind of in the plans at some point?
Yeah, look, I mean, I definitely plan to go back. I've actually, to be honest, like probably not this year, but probably it might be like next year. Mm-hmm. I kind of just want to do like the circuit. Like I think like everyone's dream is like you get a ring or a bracelet. Like I really want to do like just a circuit for like 6 months or whatever it is I'm allowed to, however long you guys will allow me to stay, and do a trip around America, go see if I can hunt down a ring or a bracelet, and I think that's like a bucket list of like most players. So yeah, that would definitely be my goal.
That'd be awesome. I think a lot of people kind of make that run. They come to the WSOP either before or after they do a little bit of ring hunting as well. So that sounds like a good plan. I think I want to ask if there's any other. Yeah, Troy, it looks like you've unmuted. Anybody else? Our audience, if you have any questions, we're going to probably be wrapping up here with Luke. So let's get those final questions fired up there. But Troy, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, Luke. So just a quick question, mate. What have you got planned for the rest of the year?
The rest of the year? Yeah, sure. So I've got APD coming back to Sydney. I know they're also going to have a couple of big tournaments. So, I mean, I'm definitely planning to play some of those leagues. I do also want to, I think in the future, I've been tossing up the idea of streaming some of the final tables through our like mini leagues and just doing some commentary on it. I thought that would be very, very fun. So I'm thinking about doing something along those lines as well, just, for the ones that I don't make. So hopefully I won't be streaming too often, but I guess we'll see about that. But yeah, I think again, just wanting to be fun and be light, I think, I can add some analysis into the hands, but, also wanting to be fun and, give some different perspectives rather than, something a bit bland. In regards to commentary on some of the games, I think.
Cool.
Oh, cool. Well, Luke, one of the ways we kind of like to just sort of wrap up these interviews is just to ask, how can people kind of stay connected with you if they want to? What's the best way to get in touch? What's the best way to find you or learn a little bit more about your poker adventures? What's the best way for people to sort of to find more about Luke?
Sure. So I'm pretty active. I'm more active on Instagram and Facebook, but so Instagram, and generally my online handle is Kingofnaps87. Just a little bit of fun. I tend to like sleep in everywhere, so and kind of fall asleep anywhere. So so I thought it was like a fun little handle that I could kind of go by, and then obviously, I don't know whether it's taken in some places, so you've got to put your birthday at the end. So so Kingofnaps87 is generally my online handle on like Twitter or Twitch or Instagram. So if you do want to get onto me on any of those, or hey, look, if you want to add me on a friend on Facebook, do that as well. I'll add you, not a problem.
Cool. Well, Luke, this is a real pleasure. I was really looking forward to this, and I thank you for joining us this week. It was really a treat to get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, thanks again for having me on. I'd so love to do this again at some point in the future. And I think like the time just flew by. Just look down at the clock. Oh wait, the session's over. But I actually really enjoy the game. I think like that's been a thing I've been playing for 15 years, and I still love playing. I love the mindset. I love getting into people's heads, and I think that's a key thing for me. So you kind of see that passion come out when I talk about poker, and I can talk about it for a long time. So, yeah.
We'll definitely hold you to that. I mean, we'd love to have our guests come back and kind of catch us up on where their story is continued. So that seems like a good plan.
Great to hear it.
All right, cool. Well,
Legend,
thanks again. And we're gonna transition over. John, why don't you catch us up a little bit about what's been going on with the home games this week?
Well, I'm going to start by interrupting myself and mention a reminder to people that when this comes out, you might have just a day or two left to get your picks in for Marek Madness. You have to have your picks in before the game is the first games are aired on March 1st. So if you want your count, or March 2nd.
Yeah, there's been a little confusion. But it is Thursdays in March, starting March 2nd.
Oh, and March 2nd is a Thursday.
It is.
See, I've been using last year's calendar.
There were some. March 1st was floating around, but it is March 2nd.
All right. So anyway, make sure you get your picks in before then if you want them to actually count. Then on February 13th, for the Tournament of Champions, K-Poker wannabe Ron Payton won their first Tournament of Champions and the coveted silver pin.
Nicely done.
Then we have Mezzodana, Dana Craven, won her first nightly tournament for the year. Now then KB won his first nightly tournament for the year. Spot Conlon won their first nightly tournament for the year. Roadstar 33 won their second nightly tournament for the year. Everest Paws, Matthew Craven got their very first RecPoker win.
Wow. Say that name again? That's not a name I recognize.
Everest Paws, Matthew Craven. They just signed up 2 days before they won their first tournament. So that's
I love it when we get a new winner in there.
Yeah. PCS 2005, Jack LaRue got his second victory for the year. Digging 8 Graves won the daily mixed event for the first time this year. Max Chaos 2112, Greg Clem got his second international victory for the year.
Good old Greg, the interview master.
Yes. A big deal. Brian DeHaven got his first international victory for the year. And then none other than Pet Vet 33, Kim Kilroy, won the LPP tournament. She can contact Jim at rec.poker for her free month at Learn Pro Poker.
We don't need her getting any better.
Seriously, does she need any more access to training sites? Like, shouldn't she be running her own training site at this point?
Well, she kind of is helping to.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Good point.
And that's her 38th lifetime victory. Wow. She's starting to sneak up.
Look out, Evil Roy. Look out, Evil Roy. Well, thanks, John. So what else is going on in RecPoker? I mean, I think that Marek Madness is coming. I think that's the thing that we really did want to emphasize. Again, Thursday, March 2nd. Every Thursday in March, we'll be boiling 16 competitors down to 1 finalist. All heads up action, all broadcast on Twitch. It's a really fun thing. We're going to have some guest commentators. Taylor Moss does a great job organizing this whole thing and kind of doing all the commentary for it. It's a really fun time of year. So join us for that. We get some good crowds for it. It's fun to be in the audience, just kind of chat away around it. So be sure you're marking off some time on Thursday nights in March. Rob, what's going on in your neck of the woods in RecPoker land?
Well, we do the book study on the first and third Wednesdays every month. And we're studying right now, we're studying The Poker Brain by Matt Matros. Interesting book. I think it's really a good way for the recreational players to begin to understand the concepts of GTO poker. Mm-hmm. He puts it, we did modern poker theory, and you really had to put on your thinking cap to get through that one. Whereas he kind of puts it in terms that you can understand as a recreational player and start to apply those concepts as you play. So I think it's really a worthwhile book. I think it's very apropos to the rec poker community, and I encourage everyone to join us on the first and third Wednesday at, I believe it's 6:30 Central Time.
Yeah, that I gotta say that is one of my favorite books that's come out recently. The Poker Brain. It's got some really great content, and the GTO side of it, I think it helps clear it up. But my favorite part of this book is part that you haven't even got to yet, which is he's got at the last part of it, he talks about exploits, yes. And it's some very interesting ideas at the end of this book that maybe you haven't heard before, I think. So it's keep joining us for that. I think it's worth a while.
And Chris, what have you got coming up in the deep dive, mate?
Yeah, so thanks for asking. So I kind of mentioned c-betting. So in February, we did our look at c-bet sizing. So we looked at we were looking at all the different types of approaches to sizing as we reach the flop with initiative. And in March, we're going to continue. This was such a deep, rich topic, and we just kind of ran out of time. We felt like this really needed 2 months to cover it. We're going to keep going with c-betting, but now we're going to really start looking at ranges. So we've talked about what is the kind of flop where we want to do a really tiny bet or a kind of flop where we want to do a really big bet. But we obviously don't want to do that with our entire range just because we get one of those flops. So now we're going to say, okay, we get one of these queen, deuce, deuce boards, or we get one of these 10-7-4 rainbow boards, which was the one where we talked about where we might want to go big on. What are the kinds of hands in our range that actually take that action? And then what do we do with the rest of our range? And then we're going to continue that into the following couple of months. We're going to talk about turns and rivers. Okay, now you've kind of crept off this ledge and you've made this big giant bet on a 10-7-4 board, but you've never done it before because you've always been accustomed to just doing that little quarter size c-bet. Okay, now what the heck do you do, right? You hit a turn, like no, you got called when you made they're supposed to fold. I made the big bet. They're supposed to fold. Now they called. Now what do I do? So that's what we're going to keep talking about in the coming months. So this will be a kind of a coordinated piece where we're kind of going through the flow post flop through each of the streets as we kind of like examine our bet sizing, our ranges, and how we get ourselves basically either to showdown or hopefully end the hand a little earlier if we can. So with that, anything else that we need to cover? All right. Well, I want to thank everybody who joined us tonight, our audience. I want to thank John, Rob, Troy, and especially Luke for joining us. I want to thank all of our RecPoker members, Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino, and everyone else. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next week.